One of the most important sections of Turner's Modern World, our exhibition at the Kimball Art Museum, is devoted to the idea of war and peace. From Turner's boyhood until he was a mature man, Britain was always at war, whether it was the American Revolution in the beginning of Turner's lifetime, or more importantly and longer lasting, the Napoleonic Wars, which began in the 1790s and continued until 1815 with the defeat of Napoleon at Waterloo. It was a time when Britain was in constant fear and anxiety of being invaded by the continental armies and navies. And Turner, like all of his compatriots, was concerned about this and was particularly excited when the British Army or Navy lodged a major victory. So that it was with particular excitement that Turner took on the subject of the Battle of Trafalgar, one of the most important naval battles of the Napoleonic era, in which the great admiral of the British fleet defeated the combined navies of France and Spain by ramming into them with his own smaller fleet. In the painting that Turner devotes to this subject, for which he did a lot of preliminary research, he shows the events of the battle happening almost simultaneously. In this remarkable painting, which is really like a great Hollywood epic of battle, we see smoke from cannons, smoke from gunfire. We really feel ourselves in the midst of the action. It is a painting of enormous patriotic zeal, the kind of picture that was really meant to bolster the spirits of the British in the midst of this very anxiety-making war. A decade later, when Turner went to Belgium to study the field of Waterloo in 1817, 2 years after the decisive battle that really ended the Napoleonic Wars, he was a different man than he had been when he painted the Battle of Trafalgar. And I think he had a different attitude towards the subject. We see in this remarkably beautiful and elegiac and really rather somber painting, Turner contemplating the aftermath of a battle and, in a way, the aftermath of war. It's painted 2 years after the battle took place and is certainly not as accurate a representation of the battle as Trafalgar was. It's really more an exploration of the consequences of war, that war is terrible for everybody. At the very end of the exhibition, we come back to the notion of war and peace in the final pair of paintings that the visitor encounters at the end of the exhibition. One is called War, the other Peace, but they have subtitles. It's War, the Exile, and the Rock Limpet, in which the exiled Emperor Napoleon contemplates a tiny mollusk in the water in front of him, the greatest military leader of his day contemplating a tiny animal, an animal which nonetheless had more free will perhaps than the imprisoned emperor actually did. In the other painting, Peace, Burial at Sea, we have a contemplation of what it means to die, and it's in the subject of the burial at sea of Turner's friend David Wilkie. In this painting, which is somber, black, cool, moody, devastating, we see an extraordinary contrast with war, which is bright and sunset and chromatic and dramatic, and a kind of a coloristic explosion that's such a moving contrast to the calm and peace that we find in the painting of the Burial at Sea. This juxtaposition, I think, is enormously poetic, and it gives us a sense of how Turner was willing not only to take risks artistically, but was also inclined to try to sway the sentiment of his viewers to make them feel as he did.